Good morning. You're welcome.
Your screen isn't shared yet, though.
Say something, John. Tell me.
It's
It's item one. Yeah, good idea. Hey, we're back. Hey, everybody, my name's John Mayer, Executive Director of Cali. This is day 2 of CaliCon 22. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we jump right into our first session. Okay, tapping doesn't work, button click works. Always want to remind myself to thank our sponsors, without which this conference, no, actually it would exist without our sponsors. We would figure out some way to do it, but it's so much better with them. So thanks folks for continuously supporting this conference, and of course Chicago Kent for hosting us, and Emily for doing such stellar work keeping the Starship C50 here running. And there is a library tour today at 12:30. So if you can't find Emily, then she's on the 9th floor waiting for you to give a library tour, right?
library director and other librarians.
Wait, not 12:30. That's when the session starts.
No, lunch is at 1, right?
Okay, whatever it is, I can go into lunch.
It's a half hour into lunch, right?
Lunch is from 11:30 to 12:30 today.
Oh.
Does anybody ever look at the schedule?
Nobody looks at the schedule. Right, so that means it's going to be at
Noon.
noon. Right.
Central time? Yes.
Noon Mountain.
Very good. Don't forget the raffle at the after the keynote. And our keynote speaker will be Afua Bruce, who wrote or co-wrote the book, The Tech That Comes Next. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to say. Question?
Yes, well, the raffle, we used to have to sort of do the little card, talk to the vendors, are we just all automatically entered this time?
Oh, you didn't get the card? No, you're all automatically entered. Yes,
Including the folks online, by the way.
including the folks online.
Yes.
And we do have some of the raffle items here. We'll give them to you if you want to put them into your suitcase, or in other cases, we'll just mail them to you. And speaking of mailing things to you, everybody gets a copy of her book, The Tech That Comes Next. We don't have them here, obviously, so we'll be in touch about shipping them directly to you. Or maybe you would prefer to get the Kindle version. That's because I bought the Kindle version because I don't want to buy books anymore. And it's not because I don't like paper books. I love the feel, I love the smell, but I can't increase the font in my glasses. So that's why I love Kindle books. All right, so looking forward to it. Now, and the other thing that we're going to be mailing to you is a t-shirt, but it's not a t-shirt, it's a baseball shirt. And it has the Cali Cali Conference logo on it, and it will have the number 40 on the back for our 40 years. We didn't quite get them in time, and these are for the folks who did designate that they wanted to purchase them during registration. I have a feeling, Scott, we're going to be contacted for, oh, I want a t-shirt too now. So we'll work all that out post-conference. I just wanted to let you know about that. All right, that's the housekeeping. Any questions at this point? Good, then let's start with the first session. I have to play a video, right?
Yeah, the video is right there at the top.
Yeah, that one. Welcome to Windows Media Player. First, we need to upgrade Windows. Quiet, Deb. There we go.
Twin.
Is it being shared? Can you all see that? That could tell on the screen? Awesome.
We can't hear it though.
I can share with
You got the CLE code in that part.
share with you. Yeah,
Optimize for
You leave here
share.
and then make sure you.
Yep. Optimize for video. Share. Let's restart it.
Hi, I'm Deb Quintel, Director of Curriculum Development for Cali, and we're going to talk to you about using Cali materials to supplement or replace course material in your course. Let's look for some tort law material that you could use to supplement your tort law class. We're going to look for 3 types of materials on the Cali website. We're going to look for a podcast, a lesson, and something from an E. Langdell casebook. So first of all, let's look for a podcast. I go to the lessons tab at the top. I see there's a heading for podcasts. I can search by topic here. And unfortunately, at this time, we don't have a lot of tort law podcasts. However, I do know that I have 2 law professors who are working this year to create additional podcasts in the subject area of torts to supplement the lessons. So by fall of 2023, there will be a larger collection of tort law material. Having looked at the podcasts on tort law, let's go back to our lesson tab, and we're going to look for a lesson. And there are a couple ways we can do this. We can look for first year lessons and see the subject areas here in these little bubbles. So we could find torts. And what we're presented with is a number of tiles, but it's a pretty long list, to be honest. The most efficient way is to find the torts outline. You can find that by either clicking on the torts outline here, or you can go back to the lessons tab, select subject outlines, then scroll down until you find torts and move to the torts subject outline. So the topic we're going to look for today is proximate cause. Let's see if there are any Cali lessons on proximate cause. I can, of course, use an edit find feature on this web page, but I'm going to scroll down and see if I can spot proximate cause. Here we go, proximate cause. There are 3 lessons: causation in fact, proof of causation in fact, and finally, intervening cause. I've looked at these before I started this presentation, and for the type of course that I'm creating, I know intervening cause or causation in fact are going to be most applicable to my course that I'm creating. So you can click on the link for either of these. We'll click on causation in fact. It takes us to a web page. So we can see the description, we can see the learning outcomes, and we can see that the course completion time is approximately 30 minutes. This gives you a rough idea of how much time the lesson will take students. The gold box is unique to the faculty view of the materials. And I know I'm on the faculty login of the website because it's addressing me by name. If you don't see your name up here, you're not logged into the Cali website, and your access to materials will be limited. And if you are logged in and you don't see the teaching guide, please reach out to us as you don't have a faculty login. I can click on faculty view and I'm presented with a full text version of the lesson. I can use the mapper to see what the lesson looks like for any branching questions. Here's some branching questions from this page, for example. And when I click here, it pops immediately over to that part of the material on the right-hand side of the screen. And I can see the differences between students selecting the right answer here or the incorrect answer. So I can go back to the faculty view. I can scroll through this document. Again, I'm presented with the learning outcomes in the description. And then I can also look for specific aspects of the lesson here. For example, this includes restatement sections. I want to see how this looks for the student. I click on student view, and I'm presented with the lesson in a student format where I can see how the pop-ups will look for the student, or I could see how a question was articulated for the students. We've now found a lesson, and let's go look for a casebook. I'm going to look under books. I can look at all the books, first year or upper level. I'm going to save time and look at first year only. Callie has a number of tort law case books written by a number of different professors. You can read through them. Here's one by Professor John Witt at Yale. He has a teacher's manual that goes along with his Witt and Tanny book that you can download. I'm going to go back to the books. I'm going to pick this particular tort law case book by Professor Zahar Syed, and I'm going to go to the book's website. And this particular book I've selected because it exists in an electronic format with interactive questions. We're moving more of our case books into this format with interactive questions that allow students to assess how they're doing as they work through the book. So let's take a look at the book. The teacher's manual for this book, by the way, is in progress and should be ready by fall of 2022. So here's the case book. Let's look at the case book and let's search for proximate cause. There we go, proximate cause. So here are all the results for the full text search of the book to see where proximate cause appears. There's an entire section on it here you can see. I can read more. I know from working with this book that the phrase check your understanding or Socratic script means that there are some interactive assessment points for the student. So I'm going to skip down to this one right here, just so we can get a look at what interactive really means. If I scroll down, I see there's check your understanding, a set of questions. You can see it's numbered set 26, which means there are other questions in this book, obviously. So I could read through this case, and then I could answer the question. Now that we've found some materials in tort law to supplement or replace materials in our course, for practice, let's look at finding materials for contract law course. The first thing I'm going to do is look for a contract law book. We know we can look under the heading books and browse the books. Did you also know you can enter contracts in the search tab? We're going to pull up an enormous number of hits, obviously. 571 lessons use the word contract in it. We'll talk later about filtering those. 71 podcasts, that's probably pretty accurate. And then 9 E. Langdell books. This accounts for 3 volumes of Professor Verkerke's book, for example. So we're going to scroll down here and I'm going to select The Story of Contract Law, Implementing the Bargain by Professor Ricks. And you can see all the versions of the book here you can pull down. This has a teacher's manual. I can grab any version of the book. I could take the Word version, select a portion of it to share with my class and send it out as a file to my students. So now I have a course book that I want to include part of. Let's look for some lessons now. The quickest way to do this, as we spoke before, is to find the subject outline. Let's find that for contracts. And as we know, it's going to list podcasts also. Podcasts have the word podcast in their title right here. Or you can scroll down and find all the podcasts. Another way to find the podcasts, besides the subject outline, is to go to the Lessons tab, go to Podcasts, type in the word contracts, and all of our numerous podcasts on the contract area will appear. As you see, we have well over 50, probably more than students should listen to. We have more lessons than students should run. So it's up to you as a faculty member to determine which direction to guide your students. So you could look through, let's grab mutual assent here. This is our mutual assent lesson. We know we can see the faculty view over on the left. We know we can see the learning outcomes here, and this is a 40-minute lesson. Let's see what else we have in the subject outline on mutual assent. We see we've got a podcast, also by Professor Jennifer Martin. In the contract area, I'll give you a tip. Most of the podcasts in contract law and the lessons were written by Professor Scott Burnham and Jennifer Martin. And where one writes the podcast, they also did the lesson. So you have some unity of approach with these materials. Here you see we have a podcast with about 10 minutes of material on basic concepts related to mutual assent. We've got a single learning outcome because it's a very, very narrow topic. If we go to the bottom in our transcript, we can see all the hypotheticals that are explained. So again, our subject outline is the best way to find some material, and reach out to Callie if you have any questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Smith, Assistant Director of Curriculum Development at Callie. Now that Deb has given a few examples of how to identify and locate Callie materials that tie into topics in your syllabus, I'm going to take a step back and show you how it might look on a larger scale. We thought a good way to do this would be to share the initial work product that Callie created as part of its involvement in the Access Lex Scholars Post-Baccalaureate program, which is, without going into too much detail, a pipeline initiative aimed at helping applicants from underrepresented backgrounds enter law school. Our task was to assemble 8 to 12 hours per week of Callie materials for 12 weeks in the areas of contracts, torts, and criminal law. This is the contract syllabus. The foundation for this was an actual syllabus that we adapted for time and to take into account how program participants would be engaging with the material. This first sheet is organized by subtopic in the area of contracts and begins each subsection with a casebook reading from our E-Langdale library, followed by any associated Callie lessons and podcasts. You can see that the first column shows the type of the assignment, whether a casebook reading, Callie lesson, or a podcast. For example, for the casebook reading on consideration, we identified 2 related Callie lessons and 1 related podcast. As we scroll down, we can really see the extent of Callie's coverage. Then, listed separately at the bottom are lessons from our law school success category that we suggested adding to this contract unit. For added flexibility and to aid in any reorganizing efforts, we included a page range and a page total, if a casebook reading, as well as an estimated completion time for each item. There's also a column for cumulative hours per subtopic and cumulative hours overall. The majority of readings are from Professor Burkirky's Contract Doctrine, Theory and Practice, which is a 3-volume set, and the last few are from Professor Rick's The Story of Contract Law, Implementing the Bargain. And of course, because these are E-Langdale casebooks, they are available for free on the Callie website in Word, PDF, and ebook format, as well as available to order in print at cost. Back at the bottom of the document, you can see that this amounts to an estimated roughly 11 hours per week of Callie materials across 12 weeks. The second tab is just one way that the weeks can play out. Here's week 1, week 2, week 3. It contains all of the same materials that you saw on the previous sheet, and here the law school success lessons are interspersed throughout the weeks. Now let's move on to the tort syllabus. The same idea applies here. This sheet breaks down the assignment by subtopic and connects Callie lessons and other materials with casebook readings. Except here, while we don't have as many podcasts in the area of torts, we are working with a casebook that includes interactive questions in the text itself, so those activities are built into the syllabus as well. You can see here items such as interactive multiple choice, interactive essay, interactive Socratic scripts, and interactive hypos. And again, as we scroll down, we can see the extent of Callie's coverage in this area. At the bottom, we list separately law school success lessons and legal research lessons that would tie nicely into this unit. And you can see that this amounts to an estimated roughly 12 hours per week of Callie materials across a 12-week period. And again, here's just another view of the same materials set out week by week as opposed to by subtopic that distributes the law school success lessons throughout. And now just a few final notes to wrap us up. To recap, generally speaking, Callie materials can help to supplement and reinforce course content, can be used to add new content, and can help in efforts to create a flipped classroom. More specifically, first, you saw that we can provide casebook readings through our eLangdell library. Because those are available in multiple and free formats and are released under a Creative Commons license, it allows for maximum flexibility in assigning the material. You can mix and match and even revise the material as you see fit. Second, Cali lessons give the student another pass through the material, or can introduce a concept where there might not be class time to dedicate to a particular topic. Our lesson link tool allows you to access grades and analytics in order to help you assess student progress. And of course, you can lose the lessons as written, modify existing lessons, or even write your own lessons. Third, our Laudables podcasts explain narrow legal topics in a straightforward manner and are yet another way to learn or reinforce the material. And they're highly accessible as they run only 10 to 15 minutes long and can be listened to on the go. And finally, our new interactive casebooks allow the student to encounter questions immediately after reading in order to gauge whether or not they understood the material. All in all, our goal was to show the potential for both individual and large-scale connections to Cali materials from topics covered in class, and to show you how to locate them and evaluate them on the Cali website. We hope we were able to demonstrate the depth and breadth of Cali's coverage.
That look good?
Probably need to do screen share. How do I do that?
It is being shared.
Oh, it is being shared?
Yeah, we didn't.
Oh, you didn't stop the last.
It's seamless.
All right, I'll just stay up here. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. And to connect to what Sarah and Deb were presenting on earlier, I represent the recipient of that curriculum that they had come up with for the Access Lex Scholars Program. So I'm going to walk you through how we took that and then we put it onto our LMS. And generally, when I think about this as a story, the story is you have an organization that had an idea for a program and an intervention. And that program and intervention, as they always do, had restrictions and had demands, had goals and aspirations. And then by partnering with Cali, we were able to satisfy each of those different demands, restrictions, and aspirations. And we will be delivering the inaugural version of the Access Lex Scholars Post-Baccalaureate Program this year. So I'm Joel Chan-Visanura. I'm the Director of Programs for Academic and Bar Success at Access Lex. Specifically, I'm within the Center for Legal Education Excellence. So the layout here is, I'm going to give you a quick introduction as to who Access Lex is. Then I'm going to tell you what the Lex Scholars Post-Bac Program is. I'm going to explain what those demands and restrictions were on the intervention that we had imagined. And then I'm going to share with you how we were able to leverage all the content and all the material that Sarah and Deb delivered to us from the Cali sort of portfolio of goods to make this program what it is now. So in general, Access Lex Institute is an institute that has several components. I'm within the Center for Legal Education Excellence. We have a grant-making component for diversity and pipeline grants, for bar success research grants, for bar success intervention grants. Those are the more programmatic ones. We have a financial and education services branch that works to help law students understand the nature of financing their education and to understand what student loans do and how they work. You might recall, and a lot of people don't know this, Access Lex legacy organization was Access Group. So some of us might remember when we were in law school or grad school, we might have had Access Group student loans. That's who Access Lex was originally. And then when they left that business, they pivoted and became this institute. And then specifically in the center where I'm at, we look to materially and measurably increase student success in and beyond law school. And we are laser focused on moving the needle on bar passage. Our belief is that students who attend law schools in the United States should be passing the bar exam at a minimum of a rate of about 80%. And until that becomes the norm, then our work necessarily won't be done. So the Lex Scholars Post-Baccalaureate Program, there's an existing Lex Scholars program that is designed to be a pipeline program for students to enter law school. But then we realized there was a gap here in getting students into getting admitted into law schools. So at its core, it's a diversity pipeline program designed to sort of measure and assess whether the intervention that we're going to do is going to do what we want it to do. So at the core of Access Lex, we have a very substantial research vision. And so if we're going to do this intervention, we want to make sure that it does what we think it's doing. And so what we're going to do in this program, or what we have done, is we're targeting underrepresented students, students not represented on the bench, bar, or in the law school student body, who maybe would not have any or viable admissions offers from law schools, in part based on the entrance exam and other credentials entering law schools. So we thought to ourselves, what can we provide to these students who otherwise at that moment of gatekeeping aren't able to gain access? How can we help to elevate them so that they can gain access and compete and succeed at the same level of their peers when they hit the ground at matriculation in that first semester of law school? And I think I described this one. It's specifically, we're talking about that additional preparation and exposure that we want to equip students with before that first day. So here are the program components if you are in the post-baccalaureate program. So what happens is the law school agrees to refer students to the program. And what they'll do is they'll contact a student who's otherwise applied to enter their law school and say, we cannot offer you admission this cycle. We are deferring your admission offer by 1 year if you agree to complete the post-baccalaureate program at Access Lex. In exchange, we will grant you a 20% scholarship at a minimum for when you do arrive next year to go to law school. We will provide you immediately with an LSAT prep course. We will give you over the course of the 9 to 10 months of the curriculum, law school prep coaches. These are 2Ls and 3Ls that we recruit and train, who check in with the students and offer support, but also give them the feedback on their submissions. There's a 10-month skills and content programming, which is the partnership with Cali. There's an in-school stipend that tracks with the students per semester as they progress through law school. And at the conclusion, they are given a Helix bar review course to help them prepare for the bar exam. So in essence, we hope that this is an attractive package to students who've otherwise been denied immediate admission to law school. And we hope that we're able to capitalize on sort of that commitment that students have to pursue the JD. So here are the demands and the design components of the program. One, we knew it needed to be delivered via synchronous and asynchronous distance learning. So all the materials needed to be remotely accessible. And we definitely didn't want to end up in a world where we were just mailing books to folks and trying to figure out if folks had certain books. And we just also know how students operate this year. And I say this year because they've been students for the past 2 or 3 years. And not only do they have preferences for accessing content, they have patterns now. And then we also knew that for the law school, referring law schools, essentially to a certain degree our stakeholders, we needed to be able to report back to them that the students were remaining engaged in the program over the course of the 9 or 10 months. And we needed to show them that there was some movement on performance. And so that was something that we needed to be able to catch. So program design. The angle we're going at here is that the Lex Scholars post-baccalaureate curriculum focuses on literacy within the domain of law school. As a starting premise, I knew we didn't want to replicate what was going to happen when folks started law school. We didn't need to reenact the 1L curriculum. We didn't need to presuppose what their academic success folks were going to do for them when they arrived. And what we believed was that there was an overarching goal here for students to become, as quickly as possible, skilled legal readers. That's the focus on literacy within that domain of law. And so what we did was we went back to some other material about sort of early literacy models. And there's a particular model by someone named Scarborough, which is excellent. And what we used is we modified that definition to choose this animating goal, which is skilled legal readers derive meaning from legal texts accurately and efficiently. And the illustration I like to use here is if we can just envision for a minute a 1L who is doing their reading for class. So they're reading some cases for their con law class. Can you imagine in your brain what that 1L looks like? So maybe they're sitting at a table, maybe they've got 6 different colored highlighters and pens, maybe they have access to Black's Law Dictionary, they're poring over every word and every sentence, desperately trying to derive meaning. It's taking them possibly an hour per page to get through the material, because at this point, they're yet to become skilled readers in the domain of law. And so the contrast to that is, can you picture a 3L student reading a case for class? And in my mind, this is someone who has their phone in one hand, a copy in the other hand, the books barely leveraged on their lap, and they have a single ballpoint pen, and they're just jamming through the case. Why? Because they have a certain degree of intuition, accuracy, and efficiency when it comes to that text. That 3L over the course of their period has become a skilled reader. They know exactly where to go to find the court's analysis. It's somewhere in the bottom third of that case. They know where that holding is going to be. They know where any disagreement by the court is going to be. The procedural posture is going to be in the first 5 sentences. They know how to move around strategically in the text, and their behavior appears to be automatic to them. But the fact is, they have built up this level of proficiency in reading, becoming skilled readers, so that they have the vocabulary, they understand the conventions, and they move quickly to extract what they need. And that's our goal. We want to try to equip the students to have that level of skill early on, because it's our belief is that a deficiency in acquiring that level of skill is part of what delays success in law school. Because if you can't execute in extracting the content you need from the case reading, then you're not going to be able to progress through the case material. So how do we do this? We have 3 things that we're focusing on: understanding, interpreting, and application. These are the 3 zones that we're looking at. Application we're all very familiar with. Hypos, applying the law to novel sets of facts. But what we're doing is we're slow walking and being very intentional about the 2 sort of foundational components that precede. Understanding. Can the student accurately recite the facts in the law represented in the reading? And then can they acquire the vocabulary with some degree of understanding, both legal vocabulary, but contextual and historical vocabulary? And then interpreting. Are they able to identify in a case what the court's movement is in their analysis? What conventions are they using as they break down the case? What analytical steps are being used? And can the student articulate those steps? And once they're able to sort of break down what someone else is doing and understand what's happening, then they are probably better equipped to conduct the analytical. So we have this idea, we know what we want to do, we know our approach for it, but we don't know how to deliver it. And so that's where the partnership with Cali comes in. The 3 big components, as Sarah shared and Deb did in the presentation before mine, are the case books. At this point, I'm just a total fanboy of Professor Zahra Saeed's case book on torts. It's ridiculous. It's probably the best torts case book that's out on the market. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And in particular, it really hits at a population that maybe hasn't, that's first generation, or students that are diverse. She has an entire breakout section in her case book that talks about how do you deal with cases that have offensive terms in them, and now you're being called on in class, and you don't know whether you can use that term in class because it was in the case, but now you're a law student today in a classroom. And it's stuff that, you know, no one's ever going to explicitly tell you about, or folks are frankly a little bit scared to talk about, but she deconstructs all of that in the book. It's really very good. We're using several books from the UNL selection. We're covering the contents of torts, subjects of torts, criminal law, and contracts. Then we have interactive lessons, as Deb showed us, everything from the podcast to the standard Cali interactions for each of the subtopics. And then certainly we're relying on the Law School Success Fellows interactive lessons. And if you haven't peeked at these, you should. These are things as straightforward as, you know, metacognition and case briefing, note taking, how to select courses. We have Melissa Hell with us today, and she wrote the Cali lesson on just sort of what are these vocabulary terms that people are using in the law school building, and I'm first gen, and I don't know what the word 2L means. Like, it breaks that down for you. So it's all in there. So I'm gonna dig really deep into the case book and the depth of it and how we were able to use it. So we have an LMS interface. So we have an LMS that we're using for the students. And one thing that was pointed out is when you have the case books at Cali, you can slice and dice them any way you want. And we did. We didn't really slice and dice for content, but what we did was we took a lot of the questions and we took the interactive H5P Socratic dialogue components and we pulled them out of the book and we put them onto our LMS. So to be specific, if there was an H5P link in the casebook, we removed it from the casebook reading and we took that very link and put it on our LMS page. And what we're able to do there is we're able to gauge or register whether the student actually clicked on the link. Now, this is a formative assessment, and we don't know if the student actually spent 5 minutes on this or 12 minutes, or if they're just going through and clicking on things. We haven't told them explicitly what we're looking at, so they don't know. But we're able to move that there. Same thing goes for the Socratic method. The Socratic dialogues. And I should slow down. These are classic Cali decision tree dialogues, but that are tracking with how a professor might have engaged the students in the Socratic method on that specific case following that case. And it's a series of H5P links. All right. So in closing, I'm going to walk you through that understanding, interpreting, and application and show you explicitly how we used it in the casebook. Understanding, here's a case that appeared in Professor Saeed's casebook. What we did was we built something that we call a lexicon, which is really convenient because it has a nice branding term with Access Lex. But these are legal and historical terms that are necessary to understand the reading. And we park them into the LMS. So a student needs to look up locus in quo and tell us what that is. They need to define the term causeway and freshet, which maybe in the 1800s were common terminology, but you're not going to understand that that means a highway and a thaw/flood. Like these are things you need to know to understand the case. And we just want to instill in them that behavior of looking up some of those terms that are relevant for understanding what's happening in the story of the case and the facts, but also understanding the law. And these are only being used for engagement. We're tracking to see if the student completed them. We're not hovering over these and picking them apart for performance. Then again, on skills development understanding, here's a case, Davison v. Snohomish County. And what Professor Saeed has in her note questions is she's absolutely tracking the development that we came across ourselves, which is that understanding, interpreting, and application. She's got questions in here that start with, what is the holding in the case? In layperson's terms, in your own language, who's winning? What does it mean to win? What does it mean to be a respondent or petitioner? What does it mean to be the appellant or appellee? These are all foundational concepts and terms. And so what we did again was we can remove these from the casebook and then plant them into our LMS. And we didn't write this content. Professor Saeed did this for us, and we just kind of categorized it in a manner. Then we're moving on to interpreting, which I think is key, and that's the ability to understand sort of the conceptual steps and scaffolding that the courts use in making their decisions. Again, here's another great case. This is a funny one about fireworks in Maryland being set off and causing a bunch of cows to go mad. And so Professor Saeed has here a description, no question one. What is the law descriptively regarding fireworks in these other jurisdictions as described in the case, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Washington? Normatively, do you think the court reaches the correct conclusion? Absolutely key for interpretation, because now what you're asking the student to do is describe sort of the legal standard, if we're looking at precedent in neighboring jurisdictions, and the normative or policy standard, because that's oftentimes what courts will do. That's one of the conventions of case law. Are we going to have a legal conclusion, or are we going to kind of step outside the bounds and go with a policy argument? Here it says, tort law is often local. Rulings may reflect jurisdictions' values and priorities. Can you, as a reader and a new law student, tell me why the court might be hesitant to put restrictions on fireworks displays in Maryland? Why in Maryland? Because of its proximity to this nation's capital and their obsession with setting off fireworks to celebrate the nation's birthday. And so this is, again, telling the student that one of the things the court will consider is the historical, social sort of framework of where the case is being decided. And then finally, here's an H5P. There's several questions in that green box of the Socratic script where it's moving through the students and stimulating what it would be like in the classroom. Again, we cut and pasted all of that and put it on the LMS, and it doesn't appear in the text. And then I'm going to close out very quickly. The application, again, was the part that we're most familiar with. We all know hypos. We all know that kind of thing. I love this one. This is a really fun deck that exists in one of the H5Ps, and it's intent hypotheticals. So you just get a really quick layout of a little fact pattern, and you click on it, and then you hit the turn button, and you get the answer immediately. So the students, sort of in the privacy of their own home, are starting to be able to test their ability to think in this domain. Here's another series of questions that are sort of Socratic, but again, we moved directly from the casebook. And then just because it makes everyone happy, there's some hypotheticals that people think law students should be able to do. You know, eventually they should. So in closing, measures of engagement, measures of performance. For engagement, the students are being measured on attending their course sessions, clicking on those Cali lesson links. There's Cali lesson links, as Sarah showed in the curriculum that they built throughout the program. Did they click on it? Are they engaged? Did they click on the casebook H5P links that we've extracted and put on our LMS? And then are they completing the graded assignments? And then finally, those graded assignments, those note questions we took, are sorted into categories of understanding, interpreting, and application. So what happens is at the 18-week marks, the law schools that refer their students will get a progress report on their students' performance of how they progressed across those three skill sets. So the student you referred has shown progress in understanding the case reading or interpreting, but maybe isn't there yet on application, which frankly is fine with me. We've got a lot of faculty and folks at the law school who can teach you how to apply the law. So that was a lot, but thank you very much. If you guys have any questions about this, definitely check out our website or stop by and talk to me, and be happy to check in. Thanks.
And we'll have questions right after our last presentation. Or do I want to drag the Zoom people over? Right? Hold it up. Do I want to stop and restart the share?
I can't share our screen until somebody else stops sharing.
Yes, and I do want to stop the share. All right, Deborah, I think you can do that now. There we go.
There we go.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And welcome to our session on the reasons for law schools and bar examiners to develop platforms for portfolios for student work. Next slide. My name is Joan Howarth, and I'm here because I want law schools to embrace experiential education and professional identity formation. And I want bar examiners to move to competency-based licensing. And we need good technology for portfolios to accomplish either one of these. Next slide. We tell our students that they are more than their grades, but grades are what we record. We have systems for grades, exams, transcripts, but as we move to competency-based legal education, we need systems to record and assess a broad range of lawyering abilities and every student's professional identity development. Also, importantly, and something to be excited about, we have finally convinced bar examiners and state Supreme Courts to consider pathways to licensure based on experiential learning and supervised practice, sometimes in lieu of bar exams, as is being done in New Hampshire and being considered in Oregon, California, Minnesota, and elsewhere right now. Licensing based on lawyering competency also urgently needs portfolios. Next slide. Other professions, teachers, engineers, architects, and our friends, the dentists, already use portfolios in education and licensing. If California can manage a system of portfolios for all those new teachers, we can create user-friendly, scalable, compatible systems to collect and assess portfolios of law student and bar candidate work. Next slide. We have an all-star cast here that describes some of what schools can do with portfolios and a bit about design. We'll hear next from Dean Barbara Glessner-Fine of UMKC, then Michael Roback, Associate Dean and Director of the Law Library at St. Thomas in Minneapolis, then Law Design Champion, Sarah Glassmeyer, and finally, Clinical Professor and Technology and Communications Guide, Jonathan Askin, who will wrap up and invite discussion. Barb.
Thanks, Joan. And here, I couldn't agree more. Next slide, please. At UMKC Law, we, in our emphasis areas, thus far in the Child and Family Services emphasis, in the international emphasis, and in the advocacy emphasis, one of the requirements for students to graduate with that sub-degree is that they prepare a portfolio. This is the content of the portfolio, and you can see that it includes not only skills, but professional identity formation. They have to prepare a professional biography that would be similar to what they might put on a website, or that they would submit for a conference presentation, for example. They have to develop their career goals and link that to their biography and their strengths and their assets. They're given a skills inventory, and they prepare reflections at a regular basis on their development in those skills inventories. And finally, they gather examples of their work. Next slide, please. The students prepare the portfolio. It is a capstone experience. Faculty advisors guide and critique, but do not grade the portfolio. They have regular check-in points at which they ask students, let's look at your portfolio. Why do you have that example? Why have you put in a new example there? How does that show your growth? And the skills inventory really acts as the structure for those conversations. Next slide, please. What makes this portfolio process work really well, I think, is that we have all the students defend their portfolio, similar to a PhD dissertation defense. The students present their portfolio to a panel of judges and attorneys in their practice area. The attorneys and judges do not read the portfolio, but they can review it if they wish. But the primary way that they learn about the student's portfolio is from the student's presentation. They ask questions, they give feedback, they make suggestions. It's a conversation and a celebration of what the students have learned, and sometimes it results in job offers. Next slide, please. What we've found is this combination of a student's self-directed portfolio preparation, which can draw on not just their curricular work, but their extracurricular work, jobs that they've had, even pre-law school work, allows them to build their portfolio of themselves as an attorney and builds the skill of self-directed learning. The portfolio defense provides a strong motivation for them to do this well. The combination of faculty advisors who check in and attorneys and judges at the portfolio defense provides powerful coaching. And the whole process connects the students immediately to the community. In the 12 years we've been doing the portfolio defense in the Child and Family Services emphasis program, we have a nearly 100% placement rate in child and family law for our graduates. And we attribute that to the portfolio. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Joan. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Roback from University of St. Thomas. Next slide, please. The project at St. Thomas is underway, but we have not fully formed what we're doing yet. So I'm going to walk you through kind of the background for what we want to try to accomplish and where we're beginning. Most of the work that we're doing here, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Neil Hamilton, my colleague here, but his two of the books that he's been involved with, the Roadmap, The Law Student's Guide to Meaningful Employment, and the newest book, Law Student Professional Development and Formation, which is available also as a free ebook. I hope that link will work. Being a librarian, I'm trying to get everybody to two materials. Next slide, please. So our portfolios are part of a larger, what I like to call St. Thomas Law's DX platform project. DX is sometimes called digital transformation or digital experience. We are fortunate, the University of St. Thomas, our CIO, Ed Clark, is quite actually knowledgeable in the area of digital transformation, has written quite extensively, especially for EDUCAUSE on these products and how to move forward. So our product is designed to support several efforts for student success. Some of the major components include a self-directed index that should be coordinated coaching, assessment, and an academic communication system. Our platform, our general platform, will be using Salesforce and developing connections for the other School of Law's information. I call them silos. For example, we have Banner, we have Canvas, we have Simplicity. All these have data elements that we want to draw from, that we want to place into Salesforce and build a front end. Next slide, please. Another area that another article that has helped us is again by Neil Hamilton, Revised Standards 303B and C and the Formation of a Lawyer's Professional Identity. This is a forthcoming, it will be out or is out now, now publication. Next slide. And critical to this is our belief that in terms of helping with the coordinated or continuous coaching, that one of the most fundamental important things is the ability to capture reflection. And there's a nice paragraph here talking about what reflection means in terms of professional development. And so the core of what we're trying to do with our initial portfolio is to capture that reflective thinking. Next slide, please. So within our system, our goals here are to have in the law school journey 9 points of coaching that students will be working with different coaches and different aspects. And the point is that each of those 9 points, the student will be at a different developmental stage. But for all of them, we're focusing on making sure that we've got help with bar passage, meaningful employment, and professional formation as sort of the end goals. Next slide, please. And so one of the things because we're engaging with the coaching now in this very fragmented way, the first thing we're going to do is take an inventory of all the one-on-one coaching engagements that we have over these 9 points, develop a coordinated progression of engagements, communicate to the students how these coordinated one-on-one coaching structures are structured so that each student understands how the engagement helps them achieve his or her goals, and then create the platform where the coaches, and this is the key part, are able to share the information in a way they aren't right now. Everything right now is very much a single coach, and there's no overall coordination. So that's the goal. That's the point of our original portfolio. And that concludes my section. Thank you.
Friends, you can go to the next slide. I'm Sarah Glassmeyer. I'm a former academic, but I now help people buy technology. So when we're talking about portfolios, it doesn't matter really what kind you have, or the goal is to help the student stand out from the crowd, either for job hunting, for as part of the assessment process. So it's either way, it's going to be either kind of messy, as the learning process is a messy one, or is more like formalized and like, look how great I am. So you kind of think about that, but for both, the decision process of what to pick is the same. Next slide, please. I had this moment where I could realize I could accurately say, back in the last century when I started law school, what you did to show off was basically a writing sample, which was your 1L memo. But nowadays, the world is so much richer as far as digital publication, and it doesn't have to be just static. We don't have to replicate just the static paper artifact. So that link there is a video from an anthropology professor in Kansas. It's called The Machine Is Us. Watch it sometime. It'll blow your mind if you haven't seen it. But it'll inspire you that you can do all sorts of content on these portfolios, and they can be interactive. So it's not just the writing sample or just your CV. You can link out to social media if you have like a TikTok like Alex Sue that really explains legal issues, or you can link out to, if you've done some sort of digital final product of an expert system, you can link to it, or you can even embed it. You can embed a video of yourself doing it. Just ways that can make it a little bit more exciting, a little bit more of something other than just print on a screen. Next slide, please. Some things you want to consider. For me, like the most important is the value of the experience. So like creating this portfolio is an educational opportunity in and of itself, because creating content for the web, no matter what you do, it is something everyone is going to have to learn. So you'll learn about things like copyright, actually writing for the web, which is different than formal writing, or like writing a blog post, issues of privacy, issues of like what your digital footprint looks like, basic web skills like HTML and CSS, and understanding what an RSS feed is. All those sorts of things are very valuable for students to learn. And then also within that, privacy, is it going to be on the web forever? And just also a student understanding that like what you're putting on the web may not be something you want people to see in 20 years. I started blogging in 2007 and some of those posts are super cringe and but they're out there for the world to see now. And so it's just one of those things to understand. And there's ways that is it locked down as something only for a formal portfolio that an employer would be invited to view, or is it something, just take off the robots text so the Internet Archive can't archive it? Just things to consider. The data exportability, you don't want to lock a student into a tool. And then the ease of use, the resources. So all that, just things to think about, but also the room for self-expression. That's a big one for me to think about. That so the student can show how they are different, how they are standing out from the crowd. And it's not just a content block that everyone's going to look the same. Next slide, please. So just some options. I feel like I was really excited to do this, to think that I'd find new portfolio things. And I always just go back to WordPress. And excitingly, Cali has a WordPress install that you can use for free called Classcaster. But also your educational institution might have a WordPress one that you can use as well. But otherwise, you can always use it for free from WordPress.com. There'd be ads on it. But it's a really great way to learn to hammer around on the web and also host content. And then lots of different interactivity widgets. But also there's Weebly, Google Sites, which are both more drag and drop, less actual coding. Microsoft Sway, which I haven't played with too much, but in the legal world, if you can stay in the Microsoft ecosystem, that makes people happy. But it's totally the basic website builder. So that's something to consider as well. But they have free options. Thank you.
Hi, folks. All right, that was all terrific. We don't have much time, but I want to throw out one question for all of the panelists and maybe trigger some of our juices flowing. About 10 years ago, a company called IQ4 came to Brooklyn Law School. They may have come to some of your schools too. They said, we've got this new platform that's going to revolutionize the way law students and employers meet up. It's going to be this wonderful platform where students can upload all of their unique skills, things beyond their grades. It will have a machine learning algorithm built into it so that all employers could punch in words and figure out who's doing what that's interesting, and then link to that person's individual platform. I thought it was a great idea. My dean thought it was a great idea. We didn't know how to proceed. And we didn't know how to proceed because I think there was a chicken and egg problem. How do we get network effects? How do we get sufficient critical mass so that employers know that this is a good platform and a good process, and law schools more broadly know that this is a good process and not a waste of students' time? I think all the stuff you're all doing individually looks terrific, but does it work without network effects, without critical mass, without the universe or a large a portion of employers and a large portion of law students buying into some sort of universal platform? And if that is required, who built it? That's my question. Anyone want to take a shot?
I don't know the answer, but I know that's one question that's in my mind, which is why I threw in this proposal so that we would all start thinking about that, because it's not even just about each of the law students in each of the law schools. What's really exciting to me is we are right now at the point of having bar examiners and jurisdictions trying to figure out how to do this too. So the coordination, I'm not a tech person, so I don't know the right words, but the coordination between these different layers, I can imagine a nightmare for students in schools and bar examiners and courts of trying to handle a big mess. And that's why I think your question is really a crucial one.
On top of that, we're all answering to US News and World Report. And if we stumble as pioneers in building a system and fail in the eyes of US News, and the employers don't buy into it, we've essentially built a platform that sort of dies on a vine within a year or two. But maybe other people learn. So I sort of want to throw this question back to our master of ceremonies, John, perhaps. It seems like the entity that might be best positioned to build something like this with the history, with the track record, with the pedigree might in fact be Cali. You know the intersection of legal education and technology and what might be possible. Is this something that Cali is exploring, could explore, would explore, and come back to the law schools and show us what they've built?
Yeah, John's afraid to stand next to me. Sure, we'll have it ready next week.
Right, so, and that's actually, it's fun. Okay. Oh, I see.
And if not Cali, who? I liked what IQ4 built. I suspect Indeed, LinkedIn, Salesforce all have their products or are developing their products. Why would we buy into them when we've got Cali that could conceivably build this? Or maybe in partnership with some of those entities.
We're actually going to talk a little bit, somewhat about that in our at a session an hour from now. Although that's aimed at the bar exam preparation material space, but you've linked it to the larger portfolio student thing, and I instinctively want to agree that network effects are valuable. So all the students should be all on the same portfolio system so that all the employers all have one place to find them. On the other hand, portfolios of students are all interestingly unique people, and the jobs are unique. And I don't know that the network effects are that. I don't know. I think there's a downside to everyone being in a big pool rather than having sort of you have to find your people, or you have to find your niche or something like that. It was Sarah's slide with all the Lego mini figs where, it was on where's Waldo sort of situation. I don't know that we want people to be able to search easily for us, because each job has got its own. It's not a database entry, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm resisting that. That's what I'm saying.
Actually, I think it is a database entry. I mean, if you're talking about building a professional portfolio for essentially to go along with your credentials, right? So you're looking at something that does need to have a certain amount of kind of standard to it. Plenty of room, of course, for there to be, personalization and those kinds of things, certainly. But I think if you're expecting employers to use it, or the courts to use it, or the bar examiners to use it, then they need to be able to find it easily and quickly, and without having to pay somebody for access to it, right? So, and that's that's probably a hurdle. I mean, you don't want to buy something that law school pays for, and then in order for law firms to use it and courts to use it, they have to buy it. And then, what good is that? That's why Cali's great, because we don't make any money. Right? We don't, the stuff that we build to make available to our members, and we can certainly expand that sort of reach to, that kind of, sort of to courts and employers and that sort of stuff for this specific purpose. And I know John submitted a question for Barb, which is what platform are you guys using? Because you're actually doing that.
Right. And so the students collect their, initially, the students were collecting their portfolios in, and they, whatever kind of slide presentation software they're comfortable with to present. So we don't, to me, the issue of technology is the second issue, because what we're talking about here is a culture change in legal education, where the analytical skills tested by final exams do not become the sole measure of a student's competitive advantage in the marketplace. And so it's going to take a while. I don't think we're ready for a big, a platform for everybody, because there's going to be a lot need for a lot of experimentation, a lot of diversification, and a lot of cultural work within the law schools to get buy-in. to this vision of what we're about in legal education.
And can I jump in just real quickly and say, I think we're at a little bit of a tipping point now with this professional identity formation requirement. I think that's going to help a tremendous amount for people to be able to think about this in a different way. So hat tip to my colleague, Hamilton, and the work he did to get us there. So I again would suggest the book Law Student Professional Development Formation is well worth a look by everybody. Thank you.
And if I could jump in for a minute, we're there with respect to bar admission, because I'm working right now with the state of Oregon for a supervised practice pathway for a limited group of people who took their February bar exam and failed it. But they will be starting September 1st, and they will be using portfolios. And we're going to be using paper portfolios or some kind of very modest system for this first group. But Oregon is considering making this a permanent pathway. California is considering it. There are 12,000 people who take the bar exam in California every year. And I just want to mention that I'd like to keep the price down, but states will pay for portfolios for bar licensing. They purchase the bar exam from NCBE. It doesn't come free. They might pass some of the costs on to the students in the same way that students pay to use ExamSoft during the exam. But the portfolios are here with respect to bar licensing within 3 months, and maybe another year before we would go online. In terms of thinking about different purposes, the thing that would be best, I think, for students would be if there's one platform, and within the platform, you can designate different parts of the portfolio to be accessible to different people. So what you show the bar exam is this subset, and what you show the employers is maybe an overlapping subset, some of the same, but some different things. So I hope we can get this going.
One of my motivations for actually doing the ordeal of submitting a video to be able to present this, which is not my strength, was that I am very aware of the fact that in California, for example, California is talking about trying to figure out how to have a supervised practice or experiential education pathway to licensure. There's nothing that could improve our profession. There's very few things that would have the kind of positive impact that could have in a state like California. On the other hand, they know, if they're looking at the one state that's already doing it, New Hampshire, that what New Hampshire is doing is not in any way scalable. We're talking there about 25 students a year. And when I talked to the folks at the University of New Hampshire about their system for portfolios, it was, I don't know if anyone from New Hampshire is actually in the group in Chicago, or anywhere in New Hampshire, maybe. Their system, first of all, they've already been through several different iterations or versions of trying to do this. They started with Canvas, but it didn't work because they couldn't get access for the bar examiners. And this is so that they had to ditch that. Then now they're using Box and SharePoint, and the staff person inputs creates a shell for each of those 25 people. And when I heard that, I just thought, well, first of all, don't anyone tell California that that's what they're doing in New Hampshire, because the whole thing will stall. And that's why I had a picture of the fairly gruesome looking dental example, and to just kind of remind us that there are, tens of thousands of architects and teachers and other people who are using right now portfolio systems and licensing. And we aren't yet in law, but we're right on the cusp of needing to, as Debbie says.
Right. I know that a lot of undergrad institutions use WordPress to power some sort of portfolio systems for their undergraduate students. Not everybody, certain programs, or maybe in smaller schools, everybody. But they use WordPress to do that because it's pretty easy for people to set up. And I mean, we run ClassCaster, which I know some people in this room and like on this call have put up blogs on WordPress and our ClassCaster system. So it's pretty straightforward. And obviously scalability is a big issue. So I think this is a discussion to continue. And I've got some questions for the other part of the session too, because we're already running a little bit long on time. But we're still staying on schedule. Actually, I have one question for Sarah and Deb. I know Sarah, not Sarah Glassmeyer, don't know. Yeah, it's been a lot of time sorting out like which Sarah for a while, but I've got it straight now. Sarah and Deb, is there a way for folks to search just for books that have H5P in them? I know the answer, but.
Yes. You go to lawbooks.cali.org and the books there, some of them have H5P. So it's yes with an asterisk, I guess. So the best thing to do is reach out to Sarah and me. We can tell you the titles of the 2 books that currently have H5P and the 3 additional books that will have a H5P being added to them.
And I will say that as we expand the use of H5P, which
Yes.
we're planning on doing, we will have ways to identify those books more readily and so that you'll be able to see that a book is available that has H5P exercises in it.
Right, exactly. And all authors that are coming forward now to work with us are including H5P questions in their books.
Whether they want to or not.
They all want to, it's surprising. Once they talk with us, they want to very much. I'm being facetious. But they do, that was the paper job that we were talking.
Some kind of Chicago, that's what they're saying, it's a Chicago thing. Everybody wants to do it.
Yeah, and we are moving more of the books into it. Because it's so amazing and powerful. And you can take any book that we have that does not, for example, let's say you're a huge fan of Val Rick's book on contract law. That book does not have H5P questions. You can make a copy of that. You can move that book into law books. We'll work with you. You can then use that book and make your own H5P questions. This is not something you do on Sunday before your semester starts. Just a tip. Best to allow a bit of time.
Also, Deb's about to go on vacation, so
That's right.
something he can start in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So when you email me tomorrow, I will be.
Not answering.
Yeah.
And then, are there any other questions about? I think we covered a lot of stuff in this session. Holy cow. They're good. Oh, totally.
For the panelists talking about portfolios, have you seen any useful documentation intended for students to talk through various platforms? Sarah listed a lot of things. I'm comfortable in WordPress, but even, WordPress is moving to a more modular format and older documentation based on previous versions of WordPress. I know that I had for my student work, I had to revamp. So just that sort of like usability side of it for the students or for employers, bar examiners, et cetera. I know you're saying like this is common in other fields. Are there any like guides to setting up portfolios that you found that you think could be translated over to the legal field?
I did not find any particularly, I also didn't look, but that's a thing, like, working in tech adoption now. I mean, that's one of the things to make sure that, it's one thing to buy the tech, one thing to tell everyone we're using it, but you just got to do some change management and customer success and make sure that things are actually feasible for people to use, and people across all skill sets, across all interest levels, that they will be able to actually use it. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that as you're doing your vetting of platforms, make sure there's lots of documentation available, and also make sure you are setting the stage internally that people are going to want to actually use the tool and be excited about using the tool and realize, and do it and not just drag their feet and try to avoid using it.
One of the things that we discovered early on as we launched portfolios, we researched the literature in other fields, and the difference between what we are doing with portfolios and what you see in other fields is that we're not using it as a system of assessment. No one's grading those portfolios. They're not used. And so to that extent, they're not like what we might envision for the bar exam. They're a tool for the students, to engage in a self-determination of their professional growth and identity and career goals and reflection. And so it's really very much an internal tool for the students. And so, some students are still doing this on paper. And that's fine. They have to figure out some way to be able to present it in the portfolio defense. And most of them are using some kind of slide presentation. Some of them use some handouts. I haven't seen any dances or operas being written yet, but who knows? It's up to each student to present. I certainly on our advocacy side, students are doing demonstrations or using videos of demonstrations of trial skills in their defense. So it's a mixed bag, but that's because we have at one and the same time modest goals, but very, very significant goals.
All right. You got a question. Go ahead, Dick.
Just to think about. So the big thing that happens, the word that hasn't come up yet is a word that we all hate, and that is LinkedIn. That is where that's where the students are posting. That is where the career service is telling to go. That is where presumably a lot of employers are. Are we thinking of, is this stuff outside of LinkedIn? Are we working in LinkedIn? How does this fit in with things that already exist? Okay, I'm going to post my slides on Google Slides or in OneDrive. I'm going to post my videos on YouTube. I'm going to link to them all on LinkedIn. Voila, I've got my portfolio or whatever I think a portfolio might be. So this is just to think long term, but it's something that's there, and people tend to go to what's there, and it's already scalable, and it sucks. So.
Yeah, I think that was kind of one of my things here, like why I want to encourage people to think about beyond just static text, which is what LinkedIn is, and have everything collected. Just because links die, websites die, that is a one-stop shop people can go to with it. And we had a question in the comments of the Zoom chat as well, kind of along this line, that why, isn't the web your portfolio? It's like, no, we kind of want to be able to have something that you can lock down if need be, make it, so it's one place that everyone can find everything. Definitely link out to things, but also if possible, collect that information there, embed the video there, and put the writing example there, so it's not lost, and also just easy to find, and also just exciting to look at, because that's something LinkedIn. I was just thinking about this, you have your examples of what you've done. You can't really link out to your conference presentation right there. You say you presented at this conference, but it's not there. Or you wrote this article, but linking out is not as super easy on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn's a very good starting place. That's to introduce a concept to people. Yeah, we have our virtual resume. You can have a little blog kind of thing going on LinkedIn. But that's if we could expand upon that, that'd be great. And plus also LinkedIn being a company, they sell your data as far as who's looking at your stuff, and and it's hard to have a lockdown profile and invite people in. So it has some issues with it.
Wow.
All right. And I think we're going to call this session to a close. We are going to stay on schedule though. We'll start the next one at 10:30 Central Time. We've got 2 live performers and a video, so it'll be fun. Thank you very much to all. Short break.
Yeah.